My wife, Emily, though I usually just called her Em, was my partner in life. And I'm Mark. We first crossed paths in college and got hitched not long after we graduated. Our life together unfolded in the typical way: a house, kids, and a mortgage. Em stayed home to raise our kids until they were old enough, then she jumped back into her real estate career. Em's an attractive woman, and I've got a feeling she deals with her fair share of teasing at work, but to the best of my knowledge, she always stayed true to me during our marriage. She's got a bit of a cheeky side, though, and sometimes that playful attitude stirred up a bit of trouble between us. We were blessed with 2 kids, a boy named Daniel and a girl named Meg. When all of this started, Daniel was 21, out of vocational school, and living on his own nearby, working as an electrician. Megan was 19, attending a state university about 150 miles away. With the kids out of the house, Em and I started looking forward to a peaceful retirement, hoping to do some traveling and maybe spoil some grandkids down the road. Our intimacy was what I'd call typical. We had a loving relationship that deepened over the years. In the early days, we were all over each other nearly every night and on weekends. But, as time passed, that fizzled down to a couple of times a week, which was fine by me. However, Em's interest seemed to fade along with it. Over the years, I learned exactly how to make her happy in bed, but it seemed like every time I tried, something would go wrong. Our trouble began about 5 years ago when a new neighbor moved in. Tom and his wife, Sarah, settled into the house next door, and we quickly became friends. The thing with Tom was that he was a real prankster, always looking to pull one over on someone, and more often than not, I ended up being his target. What irked me even more was how much Em seemed to enjoy his jokes, especially when they were aimed at me. I tried to talk to her about how it made me feel, even tried to play along, but she didn't seem to care or back down. Over time, I began to notice Tom's interest in Em, and I started to suspect that his intentions went beyond just friendship. Whenever the 4 of us were together, Tom and Em would be laughing at his often crude jokes, leaving Sarah and me to awkwardly smile along. I could tell Sarah was just as uncomfortable as I was with their behavior. I remember one day at the beach when Tom started mocking some boaters passing by, and to my dismay, Em joined right in. Sarah and I were stunned by their recklessness, but when we tried to scold them, they just laughed it off like it was nothing. Things really started to feel out of control one evening at Tom and Sarah's place. Sarah and I were relaxing in the backyard while Em went inside with Tom to grab some drinks. We were chatting for a while when we realized they'd been gone too long. Worried, we went inside to find them. The kitchen was empty, but as we looked around, they finally emerged from the living room, arms around each other, laughing like they were in on some private joke. Tom had lipstick smeared on his collar and mouth, and Em's lipstick was smudged, with her hair looking disheveled. Sarah and I just stood there, speechless and in shock. "Hey, guys. Sorry for the delay on drinks. Got caught up showing Em my artwork," Tom said, acting like nothing was wrong. Sarah and I were still frozen in disbelief, unable to process what we were seeing. "Tom's got some incredible prints. You know what I mean, right, Sarah?" Em added with a smirk. I finally gathered myself enough to speak. "What the hell is going on here, Em? Why does Tom have lipstick all over him, and you look like you've been making out?" "Oh, that's just because I got really into admiring Tom's engravings. I guess I got carried away." "You're not mad, are you?" she asked, trying to keep a straight face. As I looked at them, it hit me. Tom had that mischievous grin he always wore before one of his jokes, and Em was avoiding my eyes, trying not to laugh. My anger started to boil over. Sarah, still not fully grasping the situation, finally spoke up. "What's happening, Tom? If you think you can fool around with another woman in our home, you've got another thing coming." Tom and Em burst into laughter, and I think Sarah finally realized what was going on, but all she could do was give a nervous smile. I, on the other hand, couldn't hold back my anger. One of these days, you two are going to take it too far, and it's not going to end well, I warned them. Oh, come on, sweetheart. It's just a joke. If you could have seen your faces, you'd be laughing too, Em said between fits of laughter. Come on, let me fix you a drink, and we can all laugh this off, Tom added as he headed into the kitchen, with Em trailing behind, still chuckling. Sarah and I just sighed and followed them, shaking our heads. One day, Sarah, they're going to push it too far, I said again. And when their jokes backfire, someone's going to get hurt, Sarah nodded, understanding where I was coming from. That night, when we got home, I could tell Em knew I was still upset, especially about her part in the prank. I'm really sorry, honey, she said. I just got caught up in the moment. Nothing serious happened. I just smeared some lipstick on him and messed up his hair. We didn't expect you guys to get so upset. We were about to end the joke when you and Sarah walked in. Are you still mad? It was just a joke. I'm trying not to be, Em. But you've got to stop getting involved in Tom's pranks. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw you looking like you've been kissing him. You know how much loyalty means to me. I understand, honey. I care about loyalty just as much and would never do anything to hurt you. Please, just remember that, okay? Come on, give me a passionate kiss and let's put this behind us, she pleaded. A couple of weeks later, we found ourselves back at Tom and Sarah's house for dinner on a Saturday night. Just as we were finishing up the meal, a call came in that Tom mistakenly thought was for Sarah. Sarah worked as an ER nurse at the local hospital. After Tom hung up, he turned to Sarah and said, "It's the ER. There's been a bad car accident, and they need you there right away, damn it," Sarah muttered. I'd better change and head out. 10 minutes later, Sarah was out the door, on her way to the hospital. Once she was gone, Tom turned to me and asked if I could give him a hand with a project down in his basement. Em, meanwhile, remained silent, avoiding eye contact. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but looking back, it all seems so obvious now. What do you need help with? I asked, getting up to follow him downstairs. I need you to hold something for me while I secure it to the ceiling. It's not too heavy, but I can't hold it up and attach it at the same time, and Sarah is too short for this job. Sure, that sounds easy enough, trust me, it's straightforward. It'll only take a minute, he assured me. As we headed down the stairs, he led me to a metal support post near the stove on the floor above. He grabbed a small metal box with a power cord hanging from it off his workbench and lifted it up to the ceiling between the support post and the furnace. I noticed Em had followed us down and was watching, a strange smile playing on her lips. Again, I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it feels like I should have known something was off. All right, I need you to hold this while I secure it, Tom instructed. What's this for? I asked as I reached up to grab the box. Tom was positioned between the pipe and the furnace, so I had to wrap my hands around the pipe to hold the box against the ceiling. I'll explain in a sec, but let me grab my tools first, he said, disappearing behind his desk. Moments later, he returned, and before I could react, I felt 2 quick clicks as something cold and metallic snapped around my wrists. It hit me instantly. I'd been tricked. I was handcuffed to the pipe. Shocked, I turned to see Tom with his arm around Em's waist, both of them staring at me. My mind raced, but I managed to demand, "What the hell is going on, Tom? Get these damn cuffs off." "Sorry, buddy, I can't do that. Em's got a real appreciation for my prints, and she wants another look. But this time, we don't need you or Sarah hanging around," he explained with a smirk as he and Em headed up the basement stairs. Em exaggeratedly swayed her hips as they left. "Let me out of these cuffs, Tom. This is too much, and you'll regret it if you don't release me right now. Relax, honey. I just want to admire some engravings," Em chuckled as they disappeared, leaving me struggling against the handcuffs. I fought to free myself, but the pipe was anchored deep into the concrete floor and secured to a steel I-beam overhead. There was no escape. As I strained to listen, I could hear them moving into the master bedroom directly above me, M's excited giggles echoing down to where I was trapped. I heard shoes thudding onto the carpet above, followed by hurried whispers urging the removal of clothes. "David, I want you so badly," M whispered urgently, and my fury skyrocketed. I yanked and pulled at the restraints, my wrists growing raw and bloody. Emotions churned within me as the bed began to creak, signaling what I dreaded most. I cursed the restraints and the betrayal of the woman I once loved. After what felt like an eternity, silence settled over the upstairs. Exhausted, I stopped struggling and lay on the cold, unforgiving cement floor, my hands still shackled to the pipe. A deep sadness filled me as M exclaimed, "That was amazing, Tom. I'll definitely need to admire your work again sometime." "Sure thing, M," Tom replied. "But we'd better get dressed and check on Mark downstairs. Sarah might be back soon from that fake call I made, and I'd rather she not find us in bed together." A few minutes later, I heard footsteps descending the basement stairs, but I didn't bother lifting my head as they approached. "Oh, God, look at his wrists. They're all bloody," M gasped. "Honey, it was just a prank. Nothing really happened." "Oh, God, I'm so sorry." "Tom, hurry up and unlock the cuffs so we can take care of his wrists." I never thought he'd take it this hard. Tears streamed down my face as Tom fumbled with the handcuff key. "Tom, hand him the key before you unlock me and get the hell out of here. Once I'm free, you'll regret ever being born," I warned, my glare burning into him. He met my eyes, fear flickering in his gaze, and wordlessly passed the key to M. As he edged toward the stairs, M began unlocking the cuffs. The moment I was free, I heard Tom's truck revving up outside, the tires screeching as he peeled away. Rising to my feet, I looked down at M, who was still crouched on the floor, fear etched across her face. "You better find somewhere else to stay tonight, M, because if you stick around, I might just hurt you. Don't come back until you've called." Tears poured down her cheeks as she finally grasped the magnitude of the pain she'd caused. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. It was just a joke. We didn't actually do anything, and I don't want to hear another word about it being a joke. To me, you might as well have cheated, and that's all that matters now. From this moment on, I'm treating it as infidelity and betrayal. Expect a call from my lawyer soon." "We're done," I declared, turning and heading up the stairs. "No, Mark, please, you have to believe me, nothing happened," she cried out from the basement. "What am I supposed to tell the kids?" I didn't respond, just kept walking toward the front door. As I was getting into my car, a frantic Sarah pulled into their driveway. "Where the hell is that lousy husband of mine? There was no accident, and I sure as hell didn't need an ambulance," she exclaimed as she got out of the car. Then she noticed my wrists. "Mark, what on earth happened? Dear God, look at your wrists. Let me bandage them for you." Tom and M pulled another one of their stunts, I sighed. But this time, Sarah, they went too far. "I'm divorcing M." "Oh my God, what did they do?" she asked, clearly shaken. "You'll hear it from them soon enough. I'm heading home to take care of my wounds. After that, you can tell my cheating ex-wife that she'll find her stuff on the porch. If she wants back in, she'll need a court order." "Oh God, what did they do?" Sarah wailed as she rushed into the house, her distress evident. I climbed into my car, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. When I got home, I washed my wrists with antibacterial soap, applied some ointment, and bandaged them up. Then, I methodically packed all of M's belongings into plastic bags and set them outside. I ignored the phone as it rang, staying focused on what I needed to do. After locking up, I stripped down and lay on the bed, too exhausted to sleep despite the whirlwind of emotions running through me. The phone rang again in the morning, but I let it go to voicemail. After a shower and a quick breakfast, I changed the bandages on my wrists. Around 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang, and I looked out to see Sarah standing on the doorstep. I invited her in with a gesture. "They really went too far this time, didn't they?" she said as she stepped inside. "Unfortunately, yes," I replied. "What's your plan now?" she asked, concern in her voice. "I'm filing for divorce," I told her, keeping my tone calm. "They claim nothing happened, just another one of their jokes. But from where I stand, it doesn't matter. I feel like it happened, and that's all that counts for me." "Mark, you're incredibly upset right now. Can't you wait until you've cooled off before making such a drastic decision? You and Em have invested nearly 24 years in each other. Don't you want to try to salvage anything?" she reasoned. "I won't tolerate being betrayed, Sarah. I've warned Em so many times, and in my eyes, she crossed a line." "It's over," I declared firmly. "But they insist nothing actually happened." "They just wanted it to seem that way," Sarah argued, desperation creeping into her voice. "Their words aren't enough proof. To me, it felt real, like it could have happened, and they can't prove it didn't. So I have to trust my gut on this." She showed no respect for me, I stated with finality. "Can't you at least hold off and consider counseling?" "Em's devastated by this," Sarah pleaded. "I warned her before, but she didn't listen. I've made my decision, and now the lawyer will handle it. If you're okay with Tom's involvement, that's your choice, but he better stay far away from me," I concluded. "I haven't decided what to do about Tom yet, but I hate the idea of losing our friendship over this. Tom feels genuinely sorry and asked me to pass on his sincere apologies to you," Sarah said softly. "Make it clear to him that our friendship is over, Sarah. I'd like to stay friends with you, but I think it's best if we don't see each other while you're still with him," I insisted. "Is there anything I can tell him that might give her hope for your forgiveness?" she asked, sounding desperate. "If she can prove she didn't sleep with Tom, I'll consider it. But as it stands, I don't trust either of them. I feel like it happened, and that's enough for me," I replied coldly. "Okay, Mark, I'll let her know." "I'll miss you," she said quietly. "I'll miss you too, Sarah. Let me load Em's things into your car so you can take them to her. I assume you still have it?" "She's moving in with her sister this afternoon. Her sister lives on the other side of town. She's a widow and lives alone, so there's space for Em, maybe indefinitely," Sarah explained. After loading Em's belongings into Sarah's car, I waved her off, then went back into the house. The first thing I did was look up a locksmith to change the locks. The last thing I wanted was to come home from work on Monday and find myself locked out. I arranged for the locksmith to come the same day. Then I unplugged my phone and turned off my cell. I spent the entire day doing household chores until the locksmith arrived. Once he left, I drove to the local supermarket and picked up a few frozen dinners to get me through the week. When I got back to my now empty home, I couldn't ignore the absence of Em after nearly 24 years together. But the anger I felt toward her and what she and Tom had done still lingered. Around 7:30 that evening, while I was watching TV, the doorbell rang. Looking out the window, I saw Em's sister, Mary, standing on the doorstep. "Hello, Mary," I greeted her as I opened the door. "Hi, Mark. Can I have a moment of your time?" she asked, her tone serious. "Of course, Mary. Come on in," I said, welcoming her inside. We moved to the living room, where she took a seat. "Would you like something to drink?" I asked. "A Coca-Cola would be fine," she replied. I fetched the drink and returned to the living room. "I suppose you know why I'm here," she began after taking a sip. "Yes. Are you here to plead for her return?" "Because if so, it's not going to work," I responded bluntly. "No, she told me everything." "How are your wrists?" she inquired. "They're healing," Scabbing over, no signs of infection, I informed her. Em will be relieved to hear that, Mary remarked. She's on the brink of a breakdown, especially because you've refused to speak with her. That's actually why I'm here, to deliver a message, or rather, a few messages, Mary continued. All right, I'll hear your messages, but I'm not promising anything in return, I stated firmly. First and foremost, she wants you to know she loves you deeply and regrets everything she did, Mary conveyed. Okay, what else? I prompted, trying to keep my emotions in check. She's willing to undergo a lie detector test to prove she's telling the truth. It's the only way she can show that nothing happened between her and Tom or anyone else, Mary disclosed. This proposition was something I hadn't considered before. I took a moment to think it over while Mary watched me, sipping her cola. It's an interesting offer, but I have conditions, I finally responded. First, proving she didn't sleep with Tom doesn't guarantee reconciliation. Second, Tom has to take the same test, and their results must align. Third, I want approval over the test questions. And lastly, I'm not paying for any of it. That sounds fair, Mark. But wouldn't you at least consider reconciliation if the tests prove their honesty? Mary asked. No. She's hurt me deeply. Even if I decide to take her back, it will take a long time to forgive her, I asserted. I understand, Mark. I'll pass on your terms to her. I'm really sorry about all of this. When she came by this afternoon, I intended to be furious with her for her foolishness, but she looked so distraught that I couldn't bring myself to make things worse. She knows she made a grave mistake and that she's caused you a lot of pain. I'm going to give her some sleeping pills tonight to help her rest. She also reached out to your kids and confessed everything. They were upset with her, and she hasn't stopped crying since talking to them. I should get back to her and deliver your message. Thanks for the cola, Mary said, standing up to leave. No problem, Mary. I appreciate your concern, I replied. After Mary left, I sat down to reflect on everything. Some of my initial rage had subsided, allowing me to think more clearly about what I really wanted. I decided to pour myself a drink, heading to my office where I kept the liquor cabinet. I poured half a glass of scotch, added an ice cube in the kitchen, and then wandered through the house, reminiscing about the life Em and I had built together over the years. Did I really want to end it all? My contemplation was interrupted by the doorbell ringing. Peeking out the window, I saw our daughter Megan standing on the front porch, clearly upset. I realized she must have noticed that her key didn't work since I'd changed the locks. When I opened the door, Megan stormed inside, casting me an angry look. What's with the locks, Dad? And why have you been ignoring calls? I had to drive 150 miles to get some answers. Sorry, Megan. I didn't mean to avoid talking to your mother. I heard from Aunt Mary that she filled you in on what happened, yeah, and I'm really upset with you for kicking her out just because of a joke. Can't you forgive her and let her come home? She called me and told me what she did, and I agree it was stupid, but still, Megan, it wasn't just a joke. I had warned her many times about the pranks she and Tom were pulling, but she ignored me, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom didn't give me many details when we talked, but I got the impression it was all meant to be in good fun. What could be so bad about that? I went on to tell her everything, starting with the lipstick prank and our subsequent conversations. Then I recounted the more serious incident and showed her the scars on my wrists by rolling up my sleeves. Daddy, this is terrible. Is that when you told her to leave? Yes. It felt like they actually slept together. It sounded just like it did when she and I, well, you know what I mean. Either that, or they're incredible actors. I believe it happened, and that's my reality unless she can prove otherwise. I've suggested your mom take a lie detector test, and Tom too. If the results prove them truthful, I might have to trust her. But it hurt me deeply that she thought I'd find being betrayed funny. I don't know if I can ever forgive her. I'm really sorry about all this, Dad. I hope you and Mom can work through it because I love you both. Despite what she did, I'm trying, baby. I miss your mom a lot, but I'm still struggling with her lack of respect for me, okay? Daddy, I understand now that I know what happened. I'm going to visit Mom and try to calm her down. I'll probably stay at Aunt Mary's tonight, and I have to head back to school tomorrow. Please turn on your phone so I can reach you. Daniel wants to talk to you too. He's been working upstate and tried calling after Mom contacted him. Sure, baby. I'll switch the phones back on after you leave. Come here, give your old man a hug. I embraced her tightly, feeling the familiar comfort and the bittersweet reminder of how much she resembled her mother. She'd always been my little girl, and I cherished her deeply. Goodbye, Daddy, she said, opening her car door. I waved as she drove off, then went back inside to finish my drink. I turned my phones back on, and a couple of days later, M's sister Mary called to inform me that M had agreed to my terms for the lie detector test, and Tom had also consented. Tom even offered to cover the cost of his test as a gesture of remorse for his part in the prank. Mary also gave me the contact information for the testing administrator. My anger toward M for her part in the prank had somewhat lessened, but a deep sadness had taken its place. If she truly loved me and hadn't been physically involved with Tom, how could she still participate in such a degrading joke? I began to wonder if her love for me had faded, despite her claims of wanting to make things right. It all came down to whether I was willing to stay in a marriage that felt loveless, even if the tests confirmed there was no physical involvement. M made several attempts to reach out to me, but I quickly ended each call as soon as I heard her voice. Her sister, Mary, stepped in as a go-between, relaying M's apologies and her wish to reconcile. However, I held firm, insisting that I would wait for the results of the lie detector tests before making any decisions. During this time, our son Daniel kept urging me to forgive his mother and let her come back home. I tried explaining the situation and the pain her actions had caused, but he struggled to grasp the depth of my hurt and continued pleading for her return. I knew our relationship could suffer if we ended up divorcing, which added to the emotional burden. Thankfully, our daughter Megan was more understanding and supportive of my position. After Mary provided me with the contact details for the test administrator, I reached out to some legal and law enforcement acquaintances for advice. Feeling reassured by their recommendations, I scheduled an appointment with the administrator, confident that he would conduct the tests impartially. The next day, I learned that M and Tom had already contacted the test administrator, Jack Harlan, and scheduled their tests for 2 days later. They had listed me as an interested party, giving me control over the questions that would be asked. I informed my boss the following day that I needed some personal time and visited Jack Harlan's office. After explaining the situation to him, we discussed the questions he would ask to determine whether M and Tom had engaged in any physical activity. Jack assured me that he would ask both of them the same questions, compare their responses, and provide a final written report. He agreed that matching results from both tests would indicate no physical involvement. If the results didn't align, trust and forgiveness might be impossible, likely leading to a divorce. Returning to work, I felt more at ease, knowing that clarity about any potential infidelity would soon be available. But I also recognized that difficult decisions lay ahead. Over the next 3 days, I stuck to my usual work routine, often staying late to avoid coming back to an empty home. I had my evening meals at a nearby diner, followed by whiskey at home, where sleep remained elusive. The absence of M's warmth and love was a constant weight on my heart. As the morning of the test approached, uncertainty gnawed at me. But I knew that a clear lie detector report could pave the way for M's return, with the understanding that she would never engage in such thoughtless pranks again, especially after seeing how deeply the last one had affected me. That tranquility was shattered when the phone rang just after 11. It was Sarah. "Mark, it's Sarah. I found something important. Tom's at the testing center. Can you come over now?" Her tone was ominous, prompting me to rush next door. Following our usual routine, I entered through the front door and heard Sarah's voice coming from the office. Inside, I found her seated at her computer, her expression serious. "Mark, you need to see this," she said, motioning for me to sit beside her. I pulled up a chair, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Tom's been acting secretive since Tuesday," she began. "A couple of times, I caught him quickly minimizing something on the monitor when I walked by the door. He's also been leaving the room whenever he's on the phone. I'm pretty sure he spoke to Em yesterday. This is my first chance to check the computer without him around." With that, Sarah clicked on the Google icon, revealing his search history from the past few days. My blood ran cold as I scanned through the results. There were several searches on how to beat a lie detector test. Sarah and I sat in stunned silence, reading through the pages her husband had visited. After absorbing the information, we moved to the living room to discuss what we'd found. Our conversation continued until we heard Tom's car pull up outside. As he walked in and greeted us with a cautious look, he took a seat on the couch opposite Sarah and me. If I hadn't been paying close attention, I might have missed the slight limp as he favored his left leg. That was all the confirmation I needed. "Tom, I believe you passed the test with flying colors," I remarked, keeping my voice even. Honestly, I had a feeling that nothing inappropriate happened that day. Catching a puzzled glance from Sarah, I realized she hadn't been briefed on my plan. "If you promise that you and Em will never pull another stunt like this again, I'm willing to let bygones be bygones and shake hands. Maybe we can even skip reading the report altogether," I added, watching his reaction closely. Relief washed over Tom's face, and he eagerly agreed. Smiling, I rose from my seat and approached him. As he extended his right hand, I took another step forward and firmly planted my foot on his right leg. The reaction was immediate, his face drained of color, and he let out a sharp scream, collapsing back onto the couch. He frantically tried to free his foot from under mine, eventually tearing off his shoe to groan in pain. Glancing over at Sarah, I saw her wince at the sight of blood. But as I kept my eyes on her, I noticed the moment of realization as she connected our earlier discovery with the injury on Tom's leg. "I won't bother with the report because I already know it's worthless," I said, satisfaction tinging my voice. "Did you really nail your shoe to press on it while answering the security questions, trying to mask your lies? It was bound to backfire eventually, wasn't it?" I asked, my tone laced with disdain. "You thought you could induce sweat in a faster heart rate with harmless questions, making the results appear truthful," I concluded. The anguish on Tom's face softened slightly, giving way to a look of despair as he glanced between me and Sarah. "Yeah, I did cheat," he admitted, "and I showed him how to do it, but not for the reason you're thinking." "Seriously, man," he confessed. "All right, Sarah, brace yourself," I said as we both sat back down, and Tom gingerly pressed on his wound to try to stop the bleeding. I noticed Sarah's disapproving expression at the mess on the floor, and for a brief moment, I entertained the thought of suggesting she make Tom clean the carpet with his tongue. To his credit, Tom stayed silent, not attempting to dramatize this latest revelation. "We didn't know what questions you'd pose to the examiner," he continued. "What's so complicated about asking whether you had sex?" I interjected. "Sure, we probably would have passed that one, but we were worried you'd ask something more subtle," Tom admitted. "Like what?" I pressed further. "Well, something like, has our behavior always matched what you'd expect from a married couple?" Tom began, but before he could finish, Sarah cut him off angrily, clearly indicating she thought the answer was an obvious no. "Why else would you go to the trouble of sticking a damn nail in your shoe before the test?" I continued, my voice growing more accusatory. "And I'm guessing you came back with the nail still in because you forgot to bring an extra pair of shoes or even a pair of pliers. Planning ahead has never been your strong suit, has it?" I added, glancing at Sarah as I spoke. "Please, honey, I didn't want to lose you," Tom pleaded, his voice desperate. "And Em definitely didn't want to lose Mark, so, dear husband, when and what did you do that doesn't measure up to the standards of a marriage?" Sarah inquired, her tone sharp and unforgiving. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair and responded in a subdued voice. It was that day we pretended to be fooling around upstairs. We were just jumping on the bed. I swear, we were both fully clothed, he hurriedly clarified. We were bouncing on the bed, making it squeak. I can't even remember who started it, but somehow we began, touching each other through our clothes. It was stupid, but we both enjoyed it. I felt a mix of confusion and disbelief. I prided myself on being a good judge of character, and Tom's story rang true. But if it wasn't, then he was exceptionally skilled at fabricating excuses on the spot. I glanced over at Sarah. "Is this satisfactory?" I asked. "Not even close," she retorted. "This pair has shown such proficiency in deception and scheming that I'm far from convinced," Sarah continued, her voice tinged with frustration. "Tom, tend to your leg, apply some antiseptic, bandage it up, and then I suggest you leave. I need time to think. Plus, there's the matter of cleaning up yet another one of your messes," she snapped, pointing to the stain on the carpet near Tom's foot. Despite Tom's attempt to maintain his composure, the look of dread on his face betrayed his deep concern about the fate of his marriage. "I have a video, Sarah," he suddenly blurted out. "What?" I exclaimed at the same time. We sounded like a twisted duet. "I installed a camera in our bedroom before we handcuffed you in the basement. It recorded everything," Tom confessed before I could even react. "Then why the hell didn't you mention this a few days ago?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Tom didn't need to answer that question. If the video showed them engaging in anything remotely intimate, even while fully clothed, it wouldn't be something two spouses trying to reconcile would want to share. Personally, I've always believed that infidelity goes far beyond just the physical act. Any form of intimacy, even a simple kiss on the lips, crosses a line that should never be crossed. "I was going to, but Em was terrified of your reaction," Tom explained. We instructed Tom to take care of his leg and then bring us the video. While he was out of the room, I sent Em a message. I couldn't resist adding to her anxiety. "Remove the nail from your shoe and come over to Sarah's house. Tom is going to show us a video. Normally, it's just a minute's walk from Mary's house to ours, but it took a good 35 minutes before there was a knock on the door." Sarah opened it and welcomed Em and her sister Mary inside. Em's makeup was smudged, and her eyes were red from crying. Mary explained that Em had panicked as soon as she read my message, realizing that I'd caught onto her little scheme. Em looked far less composed about the test results than Tom did when he got back. Mary glanced at me and raised her eyebrows, silently acknowledging Em's self-destructive behavior. Em tried to embrace me, but I gently guided her to sit beside me on the couch. She kept studying my face, seemingly trying to read my emotions. I wondered if Mary had any idea what was on the video. Sarah and I hadn't wasted the 35 minutes while waiting. Our discussion centered around what we'd likely do if the video confirmed Tom's story. Sarah had already decided that she would probably forgive Tom for the bedroom incident, although she planned to make him sweat it out for a while. As for me, I was more conflicted. My initial reaction was that my wife had betrayed me, something I had always considered unforgivable. However, my logical side was trying to remain composed. Em had been a devoted wife for 24 years, and our children made it abundantly clear that they would be heartbroken if I didn't forgive her. A minute after everyone settled in, Tom arrived with his laptop. A USB flash drive stuck out from one port while a cable was connected to another. He set up the computer next to the TV and powered it on. I found it odd that he didn't just plug the flash drive directly into the TV, but then I remembered Sarah's comment about his lack of tech skills. Once the computer screen synced with the TV, Tom muttered another apology and hit play. Em kept her eyes down, avoiding everyone in the room, including the TV. She knew all too well about my uncompromising stance on fidelity, making this an excruciating situation for her. Mary watched the screen intently, seemingly unaware of what was about to unfold. Tom, on the other hand, seemed to regain some of his composure. He settled beside Sarah and tried to hold her hand, but she pulled away. The clip, which lasted about 10 minutes, depicted exactly what Tom had described earlier. There was no eroticism to be found. From the start, both of them were fully clothed, just as Tom had said. Em flipped him onto his back and climbed on top of him, echoing the words I'd heard while I was handcuffed in the basement. We could see that it was Tom who initiated the touching, but Em quickly followed suit. Watching this was one of the most difficult things I'd ever had to endure. First, no man with any self-respect, except perhaps a few outliers, wants to see his wife in such a situation with another man. Second, it triggered painful memories, bringing back the agony I felt when I first heard those words less than a week ago. The burning, throbbing sensation in my wrists flared up again, a painful reminder of my helplessness as the scene above me unfolded. Midway through, I shut my eyes tight, trying to block out the sounds. I didn't open them again until the room was filled with the deafening silence that followed their shared climaxes. The silence was so complete that it felt like even the normal sounds of breathing had vanished. I wasn't alone in my turmoil. When I glanced at the screen, I saw Em and Tom quickly separate. The video paused, showing an empty bed before fading to black. The uncomfortable silence lingered in the room for several tense moments. Once the clip ended, Mary shot Em a disgusted look, while Tom looked at Sarah with a hopeful expression. Em continued to stare at a spot on the floor, not daring to look up. The silence was finally broken when Sarah suddenly got to her feet, with Tom quickly following suit. "You deceitful traitor," Sarah's voice sliced through the air, shocking everyone in the room. It was the harshest thing I'd ever heard her say, surpassing any curse words she'd ever used. Tom's face was a mix of shock and pain as she spoke. The sound of her open palm striking his cheek echoed like a gunshot. She was furious, more enraged than I'd ever seen anyone before. But Sarah wasn't done. "Don't you dare touch me, you treacherous little scoundrel," she seethed, her fury barely contained. Tom flinched, narrowly avoiding a second slap. He winced and shifted his weight to his right leg, looking utterly bewildered. "This entire video is a sham," he insisted. "But why? We had invited Mark and Em over later that evening, hadn't we? We were planning to relax on the patio, right?" Sarah's voice came out as more of a growl than a question. "But it started raining, so we decided to stay inside. Do you remember now?" Tom still seemed confused but nodded along with Sarah's reasoning. Sarah pointed angrily at the TV screen. "Look at this fool. The sunlight streaming through the window shows it's not only a sunny day but also the morning. This window doesn't get direct sunlight until noon. You faked the whole thing, didn't you?" Tom's expression shifted from confusion to horror. That was all the confirmation I needed of their deception. The shift from contemplating forgiveness to making a firm decision was jarring, and I despised the feeling of being humiliated. I could grudgingly understand why someone might try to beat a lie detector test, but there was only one explanation for this: they had tampered with the video. The next few moments were tense. Em let out a loud groan and bolted out the door, while Mary sat in stunned silence. Sarah advanced toward Tom, who tried to use me as a shield to maneuver past her. I took a single step forward and slammed my foot down on his injured leg with all my strength. Instinctively, he doubled over, and as his head dropped, it collided with my knee, sending his head snapping back as blood sprayed from his flattened nose. He joined Em in a panicked dash out of the house, leaving the three of us standing in a grim tableau. Sarah stood there, trembling, tears streaming down her face, a feeling I could deeply relate to. For the second time in a week, the man I had loved without question for nearly 25 years had shattered my heart. The realization that this was the same person who had kept me hopeful between crises was devastating. Mary remained seated, likely stunned by her sister's foolishness and horrified by the lies Em had undoubtedly been feeding her over the past week. I walked over to Sarah and wrapped her in a hug, trying to offer some comfort in the midst of our shared pain. I held Sarah as she trembled uncontrollably, grappling with the sudden collapse of her marriage. Unlike her, I've always preferred to process grief alone, in private. But in that moment, I forced myself to stay composed, my mind detached, already calculating my next steps. A part of me regretted letting Tom off with just a broken nose. I glanced at Mary, trying to discern why she hadn't left. Was she here out of guilt, trying to make amends, or was she simply unable to look away from the disaster unfolding before her eyes? I didn't have the answer, and I wasn't about to break away from Sarah to find out. So, I let my thoughts spin, piecing together the puzzle. Tom was cunning, no doubt, but Sarah was the one who truly saw through the deception. If she hadn't noticed the discrepancy with the sunlight, we might still be living a lie. The doctored video was clever, but the realization that I had been fooled filled me with cold rage. The audio, synced so perfectly with the words I heard that weekend, led me to believe a lie, slotting neatly into the narrative they wanted me to believe. Suddenly, it all clicked. Tom's choice to play the file through his laptop instead of directly on the TV made perfect sense. After giving Sarah a final reassuring squeeze, I gently guided her to the couch and moved to my laptop. Relief washed over me when I saw it hadn't gone into sleep mode, sparing me from having to fumble with passwords. My mind was clouded from everything that had happened, but I focused on the task at hand. Quickly, I navigated through the folders, closing the software and opening the video file we just watched, file number 8. I noticed there were also files labeled 2 through 7, but 2 other files caught my attention, one titled Me and M Original, and the other labeled Basement. I clicked on Basement first, scrolling through the progress bar until I saw myself, handcuffed to that cursed bar in the basement, captured by a hidden camera. The memories were too much. I closed the clip almost immediately. The original file was much larger than the others. With a nod from Sarah, I hit play. The video opened with a wide shot of Tom and Sarah's bedroom, but from a different angle than video 8. This prompted me to rush down the hallway, comparing the footage with the room's layout. After a quick inspection, I deduced that the original camera was likely hidden on a bookshelf, while the later versions were recorded with a tripod-mounted camera at the foot of the bed. When I returned to the living room, I saw the video had barely started. It was an hour-long clip. Tom clearly hadn't mastered editing. I fast-forwarded to the last 20 minutes, then skipped ahead in 30-second intervals until the action began. I sank onto the sofa beside Sarah, holding her hand for support as we braced ourselves for what was to come. The original video was nothing like the edited version. It began similarly, with M pushing Tom onto his back, but within seconds, the true nature of their interaction became painfully clear. As M turned her head to the side, her face came into view, and I saw the expression that made both Sarah and Mary gasp. She was staring directly at a floor-level grate, the one that carried the sounds of their cruel game down to the basement where I was trapped. The look on M's face was one of pure malice. She knew exactly what I was enduring, and she was enjoying it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My wife, the woman I had trusted for decades, took pleasure in tormenting me. Nausea welled up inside me, and I fought to keep it down. Tom's smirk as he noticed where M was looking only made things worse. He didn't bother checking the time. He knew exactly what he was doing. We all watched as he flipped M onto her back, knelt beside her, and started unbuckling his belt. M hiked up her skirt and ripped off her underwear, tossing them aside as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The rest of the video played out like a nightmare, confirming every fear I had while I was helpless in the basement. M's cruel enjoyment of the situation seemed to embolden Tom, setting off a chain of events that spiraled out of control. If I had to guess, I'd say this was their first time crossing that line. The video showed how something that started off as a sick joke quickly turned into something much darker. Tom might have known he got off on someone else's humiliation, but it seemed M discovered her own twisted desires that day. When the video finally ended, Mary turned to me, her voice trembling as she asked what would happen now between Em and me. Mary's demeanor suggested she wasn't holding out much hope. I paused, letting the emotions wash over me, before finally speaking. No, Mary, there's no chance in this lifetime. If Em had come to me afterward and confessed that it all started as a stupid joke that got out of hand, maybe I could have considered forgiveness. But the fact that they conspired to alter the truth and cheat a lie detector, this level of deceit is something I never imagined she was capable of. It makes me question if I ever truly knew her. What else has she hidden from me? And then there's the matter of those workout videos. After the initial slip-up, she went back and had at least one more intimate encounter with Tom. How many times did they cross the line during those so-called workout sessions? And that look on her face. I'm sure you noticed it too, Mary. I'm sorry, but it's over. Mary nodded solemnly, clearly understanding the finality of my decision. Please, Mark, don't publicly shame her. It would only bring more pain to your children. If you give me a copy of the video, I'll calmly explain everything to Mom and Dad, to Em, and even to your kids, if necessary. I nodded and thanked her. She left with a sad but determined expression. As soon as she was gone, Sarah opened the phone book to the legal section. Over the following weeks, Sarah and I found some comfort in each other, but it quickly became clear that our relationship was too burdened by painful memories. We parted as friends. One night, as I was leaving her house after offering some comfort yet again, I encountered Tom in her front yard, seething with anger. How could he hope to reconcile with Sarah when I was visiting her 5 times a week? The fool didn't understand that he was the reason for my visits. With a quick glance to ensure we were alone, I took great pleasure in breaking his nose again. The memory of that sadistic grin on his face, just before he destroyed my marriage, would have been provocation enough. During the divorce proceedings, Sarah tore Tom apart when he demanded his share of the assets. With my full support, she threatened to press charges for unlawful restraint, using the basement video as evidence. Faced with the potential fallout, he cut his losses and vanished. That was for the best. I might have been bluffing, I wasn't eager for public humiliation, and I wasn't concerned about Em's reputation, but I wanted to protect our children and Em's extended family. About a week after the video incident, Em reached out, misinterpreting my decision not to share the video with her kids, family, and friends as a sign that there might be hope for us. Her message, which included a single clip, suggested she didn't realize I had seen the original video. She likely assumed Tom wouldn't have been foolish enough to keep all the incriminating evidence in one place. The message reminded me that I hadn't yet sent the clips to Mary. I hadn't heard from my kids that week, but given their preoccupations, that wasn't entirely surprising. It also hinted at a lack of communication between Mary and Em, likely due to Mary's anger or Em's shame. I called Mary to confirm she still wanted the video. She did. During that call, I found out that Em had moved back in with her parents. When I burned both Take 8 and the original onto a DVD, I realized I hadn't actually watched takes 2 through 7. So I did. What I saw extinguished any remaining trace of compassion or forgiveness in me. To say they both lost control would be an understatement. The same look of sadistic pleasure appeared on their faces as it had in the original version. I almost reconsidered and thought about sending the clips to everyone in Em's address book, but I calmed down and thought about the impact on my children. By then, Tom had already skipped town, so there wouldn't be a third broken nose. I sent all the clips to Mary, with a warning that if I heard any complaints about how I treated Em, I'd release the entire video. Mary must have done her job well because one by one, Em's parents, Daniel, and Megan called to tell me they understood why my marriage was over. I later learned that Mary had recounted the entire ordeal to them and offered to show the clips as proof. Only Em's mother took her up on it, but she became ill halfway through watching the original clip. After that, Em didn't contest the divorce. Through Mary, I learned that she had found refuge from the toxic environment at her parents' house by renting a small apartment. I didn't aim to cheat her in the divorce. 24 years together had to count for something, and I didn't want my children to think I was punishing their mother unfairly. In time, M sent me a heartfelt letter apologizing for her actions and the cover-up. The loneliness she described leaped off the pages. She pleaded for forgiveness, not just from me, but from herself. Her appeals for me to forgive her for the sake of her parents, our children, and mutual friends almost moved me to tears. Almost. I wasn't looking for a replacement yet, but I wasn't short of attention either. Ask any middle-aged woman about the availability of decent, good-looking men with solid morals, and she'll paint a bleak picture. I'm looking forward to meeting new people, and since I have no intention of marrying again, I expect there will be many, many such encounters in my future.